Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my March 2018 reading wrap-up. If you're not already aware, I do weekly entertainment wrap-ups of everything I read, watch, and listen to, but right now we're just doing the books. During March I was co-hosting the Plug and Readathon as well as Sequelathon, and I participated in Buzzword Readathon. Despite that, my month felt a little bit slumpy, but I think that had more to do with outside factors than the books themselves. I'm going to start with the nerdy hardcore stats and charts and then get into what I read. In March I read 18 books for a total of 5,916 pages. That takes into account converting audiobook minutes to pages, so 2,397 of those pages were actually about 70 hours of audio. The age breakdown for these books was 9 adult books and 9 YA books. I read 16 novels, 1 short story, and 1 graphic novel. This month, half of what I read was contemporary, but I also read some fantasy, nonfiction, mystery thriller, and historical fiction. If you adjust by page count, you see that the nonfiction I read was short. Most of these books, no surprise, came from the library, but I also got some reads from friends, NetGalley, and bought one specific title for a readathon. I read 4 paperbacks, 6 audiobooks, 3 hardcovers, and 5 ebooks. Most of these books were in the 300 to 399 pages range, and the vast majority were published in the last couple of years. Most of these books were by female authors, and most of the protagonists were female. In terms of setting, this was my least diverse month in a very long time, with most of these books being set in the United States, as well as some in the United Kingdom and other worlds. In terms of diversity, there was some queer content, feminist content, reads to do with race, disability, and mental health, a couple that had intersectional diversity, and a few that had none to speak of. In terms of star ratings this month, I had 1 2-star book, 1 3-star book, 2 3.5-star books, 6 4-star books, 3 4.5-star books, and 5 5-star books. Let's start with the lowest rated book and work our way up to the highest, shall we? My 2-star read this month was Who, What, Where, When, Die by Amanda M. Lee. I actually purchased this ebook for the Buzzword Readathon because it covered 4 of the 6 words the readathon was trying to cover. This is a bit of a backlist title. It's the first in a series, and it follows this journalist, and she likes Star Wars, and that's probably her one redeeming quality, is she's a little bit nerdy. Basically, she's trying to do her journalist things, but she's getting death threats, and there's a couple of different dudes she might be interested in, and there wasn't a lot about this that I really cared about. On to my 3-star read, that was How I Killed Pluto and Why It Had It Coming by Mike Brown. This was obviously one of my nonfictions. It was pretty decent. It was kind of a mixture between the story of how Pluto is no longer considered a planet, which he had a big hand in, because he's been discovering things out near Pluto and they're kind of the same size, but they're not worthy of being planets, and Pluto technically wasn't either. So it's a mixture of that and his personal life that he was going through during that time frame. And I kind of liked that format because obviously your personal and your professional lives are going to play off one another. There was a bunch about that controversy that I didn't really know, so I was excited to dig into this, figure out why it's no longer considered a planet, come to the realization that do we really know what a planet is? So if you're at all interested in this, this is definitely worth picking up. On to my 3.5-star reads, the first one being The Last Call at the Nightshade Lounge. This one was a fantasy book that's kind of set in Detroit, I believe it was, with the basic premise that with the right ingredients and the right talent, bartenders can mix drinks that give you magical properties. At least for as long as that drink is in your system. Unfortunately, it seems that most people that read it for the Dragons Tea Book Club thought that that was a much better premise than it was an execution. There were definitely elements to this that I really enjoyed, such as Bucket. Bucket was an amazing character. Loved the crap out of Bucket. However, there were elements of cheating, which doesn't really make you like the main character all too much. And the big reveal of one of the characters at the very, very end I saw coming, but was also very excited for, so I liked that. I'm sad to say that the other book I also gave 3.5 stars to was the other book I also read with Mel from Mel to the Any, and that's The Bride Test by Helen Huang. This is a companion novel to The Kiss Quotient, which was one of my 5-star reads from last year, so obviously we were both very excited to get to this one, and we both were a little bit disappointed by it. Like, it's not the worst thing in the world, but there's a lot of lying in this premise and neither of us really appreciated it. The moments where the 2 main characters were actually communicating were my favorite moments, which is why I was bummed that they were just not communicating very well at all for the majority of the book. On to my 4-star reads, the first one being a very short book called What Makes Girls Sick and Tired. This was basically a book in list format, so it was just a list of things that make girls sick and tired. It was intersectional, so I very much appreciated that, but other than that, there's not much else to this. It has some great illustrations, and it has lists of things that make me sick and tired. My next 4-star book was The Cruel Prince. I finally got around to reading this. I'm a fan of fantasy books that mix the human world and the fae world, and this definitely does that. This book is about 3 sisters. One of them is half fae, and then she has 2 twin sisters that are human. And essentially the half fae's father shows up to collect her and ends up taking her sisters with them. So now they're all being raised in fairy. A bunch of the fae don't really appreciate having these humans around in a capacity that is not as servants, so they're treated pretty badly, and that's a big part of this book. There was definitely some political intrigue that I didn't see coming. There was also one character lusting after the main character, which I totally saw coming, but I think that's because I've overheard Mel from Mel to the Any just be trash about this character, so there's that. I don't really ship it, but I don't have to ship everything, it's fine. This is the first in the series, and I do expect to pick up the other books eventually, but I'm not jumping to do it immediately. My next 4-star read was Small Steps by Louis Sachar. This is the follow-up to Holes. Yes, there is a second in the Holes series, and I did not know that until about a year ago when I did a video about holes. Instead of following Stanley Yelnats, in this one we're following Armpit, who prefers Theodore, but even in the text he is referred to as Armpit, so I just can't help but calling him Armpit. He lives in the same city as X-Ray, and they are still buds, and X-Ray is a little bit dubious. Armpit is just trying to do some summer school, and he's got a good steady job, and he likes making his own money, but X-Ray has a get-rich-quick scheme that takes up most of the plot. We also have another perspective of a teenage pop star that has something to do with the get-rich-quick scheme, if you will. And what I really appreciated is that whole plotline took a major twist that I did not see coming. But what I loved the most was Armpit's next-door neighbor, Ginny. She's a 10-year-old girl with cerebral palsy, and she is just the cutest. For a book published in 2006, this talks a lot about race, this talks a lot about disability, and I was here for it. My next 4-star read was My Brother's Husband Volume 2. I'm so sad that this is only a duology because I want to read the rest of these people's lives. Essentially, our main character had a twin who moved to Canada, got married to a man, and then died abruptly. The first volume opens with his brother's husband showing up on his doorstep to visit him in Japan. The second volume is essentially the second half of Mike's trip in Japan, and I just love these characters. This book takes a deep look at the homophobia in Japan and how different people combat it or don't. And even though it's a very thick manga, it's a very quick read. My next 4-star read was Girl from the Savoy by Hazel Gaynor. I picked this one up because I read The Cottingley Secret by Hazel Gaynor and really enjoyed it, and I ended up enjoying this one as well. This one is set in London, primarily in the 1920s, and it follows 3 different characters primarily. It follows a maid who works at the Savoy, which is a very fancy hotel. It follows an actress, and it follows a man who fought in the First World War. All of these people become interconnected, although how and to what extent is something you learn throughout the plot of the book. And I really appreciated seeing what service looked like at that time frame, as well as having a character who dared to dream, especially after the First World War. I really enjoyed the atmosphere, I really enjoyed the different points of view, and I really enjoyed the book. My last 4-star read was The Princess and the Fangirl by Ashley Poston. This is the follow-up to Geekerella. It's not a direct sequel, it's a companion novel, so we're not following the same characters, we are following different characters, and they're delightful, although you do see the other characters pop in every once in a while. So this is a retelling of The Prince and the Pauper, which is a mistaken identity plotline, and I thought it was handled really, really well. Going into this, all I knew is that there was going to be a female-female romance, and for a while I was really scared it was going to be between the Prince and the Pauper type characters. And it's not, thank goodness, because that will be weird. Because the whole thing about the princess and the fangirl is that they look very, very similar, and if that had been a romance, that would have been just too weird for me. The princess is Jessica Stone, who played Amara in Starfield, which is the movie that is being made during Geekerella. And the fangirl is a girl that wants to save Amara because apparently she was done wrong in the movie, and that is just not going to stand for this particular fan. This one was set completely at a con, and there was so much about it that just had my heart squeeing because I love going to conventions. Because of this mistaken identity, the characters were given the chance to figure out what their identities actually were, which I just loved so much. Sometimes we just need to see what others see in us because we don't see it in ourselves, and that just spoke volumes to me. Plus, you know, cute nerds being cute. Am I right? Best thing ever. On to my 4.5-star reads, the first one being a reread, which was Sadie. This one I finally listened to the audiobook instead of reading in print, and it is definitely worth listening to the audiobook if you have the means to do so. This book is done in such an interesting format. Half comes from the perspective of Sadie, who's a teenage girl whose younger sister was recently murdered. She's got a stutter, so that's a major part of the text, but also a major part of the audiobook. And she's going on a journey to find her sister's murderer. The other perspective in this book is a podcast, which is following her steps a few months after. I love a good crime podcast. The first season of Serial, wonderful. S-Town, loved it. And this podcast just made me think of those. However, there are a crap ton of trigger warnings, including abuse and abuse of minors and sexual abuse, so know that going into it. My next 4.5-star read was An Artificial Night. This is the third in the October Day series by Shauna McGuire, and I just loved it so much. Obviously, being the third in a series, I'm not going to tell you too much about the plot, but what I am going to tell you is that I still continue to love the characters So much happens in this plot. It is very twisty, it is very turny. You are seeing a lot of different characters in a lot of different ways. And by the end of it, there is something that's introduced at the beginning that hasn't really been resolved at the end, and you're happy about it, but you also don't know how it's going to play out. My last 4.5-star read was Collateral Damage by Taylor Simmons. This is a book that is coming out in June, and when it comes out, you should read it immediately if you love platonic friendships and superheroes. This book is about Meg Sawyer, who lives in a city where superheroes are the justice of the day, and she is just not here for it. In her opinion, these 4 superheroes basically just destroy everything that she owns or the place where she works, and she doesn't need that in her life. She's just trying to make a living wage. Like I mentioned, one of the things I absolutely adored about this book was the platonic friendships. There is no love plotline in this book, which is just so hard to find, especially in YA. Not to mention, this takes superheroes, stereotypes, and just plays with them, and I loved it. It was so imaginative, and I can't wait for the entire world to be able to read it. On to my 5-star reads, the first one being another reread, and that was What If It's Us by Becky Albertalli and Adam Silvera. Again, I listened to the audiobook for this one because I had previously read it in print. I mostly picked this up because there was a prompt to reread a book for the plug-in readathon, and I wanted to know how the voice actors tackled these characters who I already loved. If you aren't already familiar with this book, it starts with a meet-cute between Arthur, who is a boy who's just in New York for the summer, and Ben, who is mailing back a box of his ex-boyfriend's stuff. They meet, but they're interrupted and they're not able to exchange numbers, and then it's this whole series of them almost finding each other again, and then other things happen. I don't want to wreck it past that. When I originally read this, I remember being about 70% through the book, and I remember this very vividly because I was doing a reading vlog for the 24 and 48, which is when I read it originally, and I remember getting very, very scared that it was going to end super sad because Adam Silvera, but I actually adore the ending of this book. And that's all I'm gonna say, because I'm not gonna wreck it for you. My next 5-star read was On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. I've seen a lot of people be like, yeah, this is great, this is another Angie Thomas. I didn't quite like it as much as the last book because it didn't really speak to me as much, and I thought it was just as good as The Hate U Give. This book is about Bree, who is a teenage rapper who is just doing everything she can to keep her family above the waterline. She's just trying to make sure that they survive and their lights don't get shut off again. Tragically, her father was killed when she was young, but he was an underground rapper. So she feels like she has huge shoes to fill, but she also wants to fill them herself. She wants to be her own rapper. And so many things are touched on in this book, race and poverty and privilege, and I loved it just as much as The Hate U Give. I love that it's set in the same area, so we hear a little bit about what happened in the first book in this book, but not a lot. And I just found it incredibly powerful. My next 5-star read was Song of the Dead, which is the second in the Reign of the Fallen duology by Sarah Glenn Marsh. This follows a bisexual necromancer, and need I say more? Honestly, I can't really tell you the plot of this one because it's the second in the duology, but oh my goodness, you should read it. The way magic works in this series is very, very interesting, and I loved getting to delve into more types of magic as we went along. And on top of that, I really felt for a lot of the emotions that the characters were going through in this book, and there's just such a sense of adventure, which is something I just need in my life right now. My penultimate 5-star read for this month was A Heart and a Body in the World by Deb Coletti. This book will make you cry. I'm just telling you that right up front. Main character is harassed while getting some fast food and just starts running from the scene and decides that she's not going to stop running until she makes it to Washington, D.C. That's pretty far away because she starts running in Seattle. With the help of her friends back home, who are contacting media and getting funding through a GoFundMe type of site, and her fantastic grandfather, who is basically following her along this trail in his RV so she has a place to sleep each night. You just know that this protagonist has gone through something, but you don't really know what it is until further on in the book, and tears everywhere. Obviously, this was incredibly impactful. I loved it with my whole heart and soul, and you should pick it up if you can make it through those tears. My favorite book of the month was Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuestion. This one had me at the premise, to be honest. This is a hate-to-love romance between the first son of the United States and one of the princes of England. Just right there, that premise, I wanted to read this book. But then you add in the details, including that his mother is the first female president of the United States right after Obama. You add in that he is mixed race and during the course of the book realizes that he is bisexual. You also add in that nobody in Britain knows that this particular prince is queer in any sense of the word, let alone very gay. You add in fantastic friendships and people wanting to work in politics, and politics in the background of this playing a major part of it, and this book so good. This one comes out on May 14th, so if you haven't already pre-ordered it, I definitely suggest doing so. If you want to hear me talk more about these books, or other books for that matter, the weekly entertainment playlist is always listed down below. If you've read any of these, please let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!